The first-class lounge of San Francisco International Airport hummed with the quiet efficiency of wealth and privilege. Clara Morel stood out even in this refined environment, her presence as carefully curated as her ensemble. Her tailored black Chanel suit spoke of success, each line pressed to perfection, her stiletto heels clicking with purposeful precision against the polished marble floor. She was everything money could buy. Confidence personified, with sharp features that suggested both intelligence and a certain ruthless determination. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, diamond earrings catching the soft overhead lighting. To the casual observer, Clara was the epitome of professional elegance, a woman who knew exactly who she was and where she was going. Nearby, almost invisible against the luxurious backdrop, stood Keanu Reeves. His attire couldn't have been more different. Worn jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and a well-loved leather jacket that had seen countless miles. Where Clara projected calculated sophistication, Keanu embodied a quiet, understated authenticity that seemed to exist entirely outside the performative world of status and appearance. As the boarding line began to move, Clara's eyes swept across the first-class passengers, her gaze landing on Keanu with a mixture of curiosity and mild disdain. To her friend Sophie, who stood beside her, she couldn't help but make a cutting observation. "Look at him," she whispered, a sardonic smile playing at the corner of her lips. "He clearly doesn't realize he's in the wrong class. First class isn't for casual travelers." The comment was deliberate, meant to be heard. Clara was accustomed to her words carrying weight, to creating reactions. But Keanu, standing just close enough to have heard her remark, simply turned and offered a polite, almost gentle smile. There was no embarrassment, no anger, just a serene acknowledgement of her presence. It was this reaction that first unsettled Clara. She was used to people responding to her, either with immediate deference or defensive posturing. This calm, this complete lack of engagement, was something entirely unexpected. As they approached the boarding gate, the contrast between them became even more pronounced. Clara's boarding pass was a gleaming platinum card, held between manicured fingers. Keanu's was simple, almost unremarkable, tucked casually into the pocket of his jacket. The flight attendant, impeccably dressed, checked their tickets. "First class, right this way," she said professionally, guiding them down the jet bridge. Clara moved with the practiced grace of someone accustomed to premium travel, while Keanu followed with an easy, unassuming stride. Inside the aircraft, the first-class cabin was a study in understated luxury. Cream leather seats that could transform into fully flat beds, personal entertainment systems, and enough personal space to make the journey feel like a private experience. Clara settled into her seat with the practiced movements of a frequent traveler, arranging her designer bag, adjusting her seat's position. To her mild surprise and initial irritation, she realized Keanu was seated directly next to her. He moved with a quiet efficiency, stowing his minimal luggage, sitting down without any of the fuss or performance she was accustomed to seeing. Clara found herself studying him surreptitiously. There was something about him, a calm that seemed to radiate outward, completely at odds with her initial dismissive assessment. His hands, she noticed, were strong but gentle. His profile, when he glanced out the window, had a thoughtfulness that spoke of depth. She wasn't prepared for how completely he seemed unaffected by her earlier comment. Most people would have shown some reaction: embarrassment, anger, a desire to prove themselves. But Keanu? He seemed entirely comfortable in his own skin, unbothered by external judgments. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this journey was going to be unlike any she had taken before. Something about the man beside her suggested that her carefully constructed world was about to be challenged in ways she couldn't yet understand. Little did she know how profoundly this unexpected encounter would change her. The first-class cabin hummed with a subtle tension, an electric undercurrent that seemed to pulse between Clara Morell and her unexpected seatmate. Keanu Reeves sat with an uncommon stillness, his casual attire a stark contrast to the meticulously curated environment of the aircraft. Clara shifted in her seat, her designer blazer rustling softly as she turned to study the man beside her. Her initial dismissive glance from the boarding area now transformed into a more calculated observation. She sized him up, her mind racing with assumptions, desperate to categorize him into some predictable box. "Do you work in advertising?" she asked, her tone a perfect blend of forced politeness and subtle condescension. "With that simple style, you must be creative, right?" The question hung in the air, laden with an unspoken judgment. Clara expected a defensive response, perhaps an awkward explanation or a nervous laugh. Instead, Keanu met her gaze with a calm that seemed to absorb her attempted provocation. "I suppose everyone finds their place, one way or another," he responded, his voice measured and surprisingly philosophical. The enigmatic reply caught Clara off guard. Her perfectly manicured fingers, adorned with a platinum wedding band and an ostentatious diamond ring, momentarily froze on the armrest. Something in his response was both dismissive and deeply profound, rendering her initial approach ineffective. Other passengers began to notice the subtle exchange. A businessman seated across the aisle shifted slightly, his peripheral vision tracking the interaction. A flight attendant paused mid-service, sensing the underlying current of their conversation. Clara, unused to being met with such composed indifference, pressed forward. "You're quite philosophical for someone who seems, how should I put this, out of place?" Keanu's smile was minimal, but genuine. "Out of place is just another perspective," he said, his eyes carrying a depth that suggested multiple layers of meaning. The passengers around them were now fully engaged, their conversations subdued, attention subtly drawn to the unfolding dynamic. Clara realized she was no longer completely in control of the narrative she had initially attempted to construct. Her provocations continued, each designed to elicit some form of reaction. "What do you do?" she asked, her tone now a mix of genuine curiosity and residual condescension. "I tell stories," Keanu replied simply. "Sometimes on screen, sometimes just in conversation." The ambiguity of his response further intrigued the surrounding passengers. Whispers began to circulate, soft exchanges that Clara couldn't quite catch. Something about this man was different. Something beyond her initial dismissive assessment. Clara's professional persona, honed through years of corporate negotiations and social maneuvering, was being systematically dismantled by this calm, unassuming individual. Each of her attempts to establish conversational dominance was met with a response that was simultaneously direct and enigmatic. "You're an interesting traveler," she finally admitted, a hint of genuine curiosity replacing her earlier sarcasm. Keanu simply nodded, his gaze momentarily drifting to the window, where clouds stretched across an infinite blue canvas. The gesture was almost meditative, completely detached from the social chess match Clara had been attempting to engage him in. The other passengers watched, fascinated. What began as a potential confrontation had transformed into something more nuanced. A psychological dance, where Clara's aggressive social algorithms were being challenged by Keanu's serene, almost zen-like approach. As the flight continued, Clara found herself increasingly unsettled. This man, whoever he was, did not fit into any category she was familiar with. He was neither intimidated nor aggressive, neither boastful nor defensive. He simply was. Little did she know that the most dramatic revelation of their encounter was yet to come. A moment that would completely shatter her carefully constructed perceptions and force her to confront her own deeply ingrained prejudices. The first-class cabin continued its journey, carrying with it the promise of an unexpected transformation. The first-class cabin seemed to contract with unspoken tension, the air thick with anticipation. Clara Morell shifted in her seat, her perfectly tailored Chanel suit rustling softly as she repositioned herself next to Keanu. Her initial confidence had begun to fray at the edges, fraying like an expensive silk thread pulled too tight. The other passengers had become silent observers, their attention subtly drawn to the intricate dance of words and intentions playing out between Clara and Keanu. Some pretended to read, others discreetly glanced over digital devices, but their ears were attuned to every nuanced exchange. Clara's fingers drummed an impatient rhythm on the armrest. She was unaccustomed to being denied the reaction she sought. Most people would have bristled, defended themselves, or at least shown some sign of discomfort under her calculated verbal jabs. But Keanu remained an enigma, calm, centered, almost meditative in his composure. "You seem remarkably unperturbed," she said, her tone a mix of challenge and genuine curiosity. "Most people would have something to say by now." Keanu turned slightly, meeting her gaze with those deep, perceptive eyes that seemed to hold stories beyond immediate comprehension. "Not every moment requires a response," he replied, a gentle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Sometimes, listening is more profound than speaking." His words hung in the air, pregnant with unexpected wisdom. Clara found herself momentarily disarmed, her usual arsenal of witty retorts seemingly neutralized. The flight attendant approached, offering refreshments. As she placed a glass of juice before Clara and a simple water before Keanu, the contrast was almost symbolic. Opulence versus simplicity. "No juice?" Clara couldn't resist asking, her eyebrow arched. "Water suits me fine," Keanu responded, taking a measured sip. Sensing her growing frustration, Clara decided to change her approach. If provocation wasn't working, perhaps mockery would elicit a response.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
"You seem like someone in hiding," she said, her voice laden with theatrical speculation. "Do you act in theater, perhaps?" A ripple of subtle reactions passed through the cabin. Some passengers exchanged knowing glances, a few suppressed smiles. They knew something Clara did not. Keanu's response was characteristic, calm and philosophical. "We're all performers in some way," he said, presenting different versions of ourselves depending on the context and audience. His statement was both a deflection and a profound observation. Clara felt herself being drawn into a conversational landscape she didn't fully understand, her usual social tactics feeling increasingly ineffective. Whispers began to circulate among the passengers, soft, excited murmurs that Clara couldn't quite decipher. Something was happening, a current of recognition flowing just beneath the surface of their interaction. At one point, Keanu leaned back and delivered a statement that seemed to captivate everyone. "No matter our luck or hard work, we all end up in the same place at the end of this flight." The statement was deceptively simple, yet it carried a weight that made several passengers pause. Clara felt something shifting, not just in the conversation, but in the very atmosphere of the cabin. Her provocations were becoming less about belittling and more about understanding. Who was this man who responded to her attempts at social undermining with such grace and depth? The whispers around them grew, becoming more pronounced. Clara noticed passengers stealing glances, some attempting to be discreet, others more openly curious. Yet she remained oblivious to the undercurrent of recognition building around her. She was on the precipice of a revelation, though she didn't know it yet. The charged atmosphere continued to build, a quiet electrical storm of anticipation waiting to break. Keanu remained serene, a calm center in the growing atmospheric tension. His presence was becoming increasingly intriguing, not just to Clara, but to everyone observing their extraordinary interaction. Little did Clara know that the next moments would fundamentally alter her perception of the man sitting beside her, challenging every assumption she had made since boarding this flight. The cabin suddenly felt electric, charged with an anticipation Clara couldn't yet comprehend. Her mind was still processing their previous conversation, the philosophical exchanges that had left her simultaneously irritated and intrigued. The soft hum of the aircraft's engines provided a consistent backdrop to the mounting tension. Unexpectedly, a flight attendant's crisp voice cut through the ambient noise, delivering an announcement that would transform everything. "Mr. Reeves, your reservation for your next connection has been confirmed." Time seemed to slow. The whispers began softly, like a distant breeze, gradually crescendoing into excited murmurs. Clara noticed passengers subtly glancing in their direction, their expressions shifting from casual curiosity to barely contained excitement. Smartphones emerged discreetly, capturing surreptitious images. Her seatmate, the man she had so casually dismissed, Keanu Reeves. The realization struck her like a physical blow. The globally renowned actor, whose films she had watched countless times, whose performances she had admired, had been sitting beside her this entire time. Every sarcastic comment, every condescending remark she had made now felt monumentally embarrassing. Clara's cheeks burned with a searing shame. Her meticulously maintained composure began to crack, revealing the vulnerable human beneath her polished exterior. The sophisticated veneer she had so carefully constructed started to crumble, leaving her feeling exposed and small. Keanu, in contrast, remained remarkably composed. He seemed utterly unperturbed by the sudden attention, maintaining the same calm demeanor that had characterized their entire interaction. Where another celebrity might have reveled in the recognition or demanded special treatment, he simply sat quietly, a study in understated elegance. "I didn't mean to be rude," Clara stammered, her usual articulate speech deserting her. "I thought you were... I didn't realize..." Her words trailed off, hanging awkwardly in the charged atmosphere. Apologies had never been her strong suit. In her professional world of corporate negotiations and high-stakes meetings, vulnerability was seen as a weakness. Yet here she was, completely disarmed. Keanu turned, meeting her gaze with an expression that was simultaneously understanding and firm. His eyes, kind yet penetrating, seemed to look beyond her surface, seeing something deeper. "You can't always judge a book by its cover," he said quietly, those simple words carrying more weight than any elaborate speech. The statement wasn't accusatory. It wasn't delivered with any hint of superiority or resentment. Instead, it felt like a gentle lesson, an invitation to reflection. Around them, the other first-class passengers seemed caught between discretion and fascination. Some tried to steal glances, others pretended not to notice, but the electricity of the moment was undeniable. Clara realized her interaction with Keanu had become an unexpected performance, with multiple silent witnesses. The flight attendant, seemingly oblivious to the personal drama unfolding, continued her routine checks, her professional demeanor unchanged. She offered Keanu a deferential smile, which he returned with a simple nod. Another demonstration of his remarkable groundedness. Clara's mind raced, replaying their earlier conversations. His philosophical comments, his serene responses to her provocations, they now took on an entirely different context. What she had perceived as mundane or creative rambling were actually profound observations, made more powerful by the identity of their source. She had built her entire professional persona on quick assessments, on the ability to size up a situation or person instantaneously. Yet here was living proof of how dangerous such snap judgments could be. Keanu Reeves, a global icon, an actor of remarkable depth and range, had been sitting right beside her, and she had seen nothing. The revelation was humbling. More than humbling, it was transformative. As the aircraft continued its steady journey through the clouds, Clara sat in a state of quiet introspection. The man beside her, who had been the subject of her initial derision, had just administered a masterclass in grace, humility, and human understanding. And she was listening. Finally, truly listening. The cabin's soft light filtered through the windows as the aircraft descended toward the runway, casting a contemplative glow across Clara Morell's face. Her earlier bravado had completely dissolved, replaced by a profound sense of introspection that made her skin flush with remembered embarrassment. As the plane taxied to its final position, Clara found herself wrestling with an internal dialogue more challenging than any professional negotiation she'd ever encountered. The man beside her, Keanu Reeves, sat with the same calm composure he'd maintained throughout their entire journey, a striking contrast to her own emotional turbulence. "Mr. Reeves," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I want to apologize, sincerely." Keanu turned, his gaze meeting hers with a depth that seemed to penetrate beyond mere surface appearances. The passengers around them were beginning to gather their belongings, but in this moment, it felt as if only they existed. Clara's apology continued, each word carefully chosen. "My behavior was inexcusable. I judged you entirely based on appearances, and I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong." A gentle smile played on Keanu's lips, not mocking, not dismissive, but genuinely understanding. "Acknowledgement is the first step towards growth," he responded, his voice carrying a wisdom that seemed to transcend their brief encounter. The cabin crew began announcing disembarkation instructions, but Clara found herself momentarily suspended in this intimate moment of revelation. Her entire professional persona, built on quick assessments and razor-sharp judgments, seemed to crumble in the face of Keanu's compassionate response. As they moved towards the aircraft's exit, Clara observed Keanu with newfound respect. Despite his global fame, there was no sense of superiority or performative humility. When fans approached, requesting photographs or autographs, he engaged with each person as though they were the only individual in the world. "What matters," Keanu said, turning to Clara as a young fan nervously approached him, "is not how the world sees you, but how you choose to see the world." The interaction unfolded like a masterclass in genuine human connection. The young fan, initially starstruck, soon found herself in an authentic conversation, Keanu listening with genuine interest, making her feel valued and seen. Clara watched, transfixed. Her world of corporate negotiations and carefully curated interactions seemed suddenly superficial compared to this simple, profound human engagement. "You've given me more than an apology opportunity," she admitted as they walked through the airport. "You've provided a perspective I didn't know I was missing." Keanu's response was characteristic, simple yet profound. We're all students in this journey of life. Today, you learned. Tomorrow, someone else might learn from you. The airport's bustling environment seemed to fade around them. Travelers rushed past, caught in their individual worlds, but Clara felt fundamentally altered. The designer suit she wore, the expensive watch that typically signaled her status, they suddenly felt like mere accessories to something more substantial. As they approached the airport's main exit, Clara realized this encounter was far more than a chance meeting. It was a transformative moment that challenged her fundamental understanding of worth, status, and human interaction. "Thank you," she said simply, extending her hand. Keanu shook it, his grip warm and genuine. No performance, no artifice, just a human connection. Walking away, Clara understood that true elegance wasn't about external polish, but internal authenticity. The lessons of humility, of looking beyond surface appearances, of valuing human dignity over social constructs, they would reshape her approach to life far more profoundly than any professional achievement. The first-class flight had been more than a journey between destinations. It had been a journey of personal transformation. As Keanu disappeared into the crowd, Clara realized some encounters change you forever, not through grand gestures, but through quiet, profound moments of genuine human connection. Her world would never look the same again.